All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the FearCast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for today, the first episode of 2026. We'll see what sort of weird year we all have, right? It's let's be optimistic. Can we be Yeah, it's going to be great, right? It's going to be good. It's going to be fine. We'll get through it. We'll get through it. We'll get through it, and there'll be another one after this. It'll be great, unless there isn't, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, so I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season, a wonderful new year. I hope we all did something fun and crazy and went out and did things, went on the town. And I'll tell you, we didn't. I know I did. I didn't. But every year I've tried to do something fun. It just gets smashed. Just something happens. Someone gets sick. There's traffic. It's awful. Car breaks down. Who knows? It's never good. So we resolved to sit at the house watching some stand-up comedy, which, by the way, go out there and watch Kumail Nanjiani's new stand-up. It's on Hulu, but if you have Disney, you might have Hulu, or I don't. Either way, check it out. It's very good. It's very funny. And eating chicken wings. That's what I do. So it was glorious for me. I got ahead of myself. This is a question and answer based podcast. If you have a question for me about OCD or anxiety spectrum disorders, the OCD spectrum, the anxiety spectrum includes all sorts of anxious things. It includes generalized anxiety, like just stuff that you and I are nervous about, right? Money, health, relationships, the state of the world, etc. It can be elevated into health anxiety, right? Hypochondria. It can be social anxiety. It can be specific phobias, right? Heights, spiders, airplanes, all that stuff, right? It can be OCD and all of its various fun manifestations of it, right? So send me a question. I will listen to it, likely put it up on a future episode. There are a couple of ways to get me a question. You can go over to FearCastPodcast.com and you can send me a message over there. Click on the submit a question link. You type it in, and it will directly send to me via electronic email, and I will read it. The other options you have, you can also go to FearCast Podcast, and you can click on the speak pipe. I will never get that right. And you can record your audio question. Audio questions go to the top of the list, which Dave did, and I'm going to be talking about Dave's question today. You can also go over to Instagram. I am FearCast Podcast over at the Instagrams. And you can send me an audio question over there by sending me a DM and clicking on the little microphone button. I've explained this before. I hope it's not too annoying. It probably is. And I'm going to continue to be annoying because sometimes we have to say the same things over and over and over again, right? You all know how it goes. All right. So that is how you can get me a question. This podcast is entirely run by y'all, right? So whatever questions happen to come in, and there are waves of things. There's like there's the sensorimotor wave, and then we get an ROCD wave, and then sometimes we'll get more taboo kind of sexual obsessions fly in, and then we'll get some. We don't get a lot of contamination conversations for some reason. We'd love to get more. We don't get a lot of like straight up harm obsessions. We'd love to get more of those. I would love to get more scrupulosity questions. If you have scrup or religious anxiety questions, send them in. I want to hear them. I want to talk about them. Those are so much fun for me. I have a passion for it. I'm interested in it. I care about your faith, whatever faith it is. I want it to be thriving and good and exciting and giving rather than a suck on life. So, and the afterlife perhaps. But, anyway, so that's what this podcast is about. So Dave sent in a great question about sensorimotor and sensorimotor adjacent things, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But circling back now to the thing that I said in advance of the thing that I should have said first, but I didn't, so I'm going to go back to that thing now. I hope everyone had a wonderful new year, and hope you did something fun and are geared up for this next year. Are you into resolutions, the New Year's resolutions. I do them and then fail at them. I fail at them terribly. And naturally, this year I set one for health. I'm going to try to get healthy again. I'm going to try to fit my pants again in a healthy way. And we started it out by doing Whole 30. I don't know if you ever heard of Whole 30. It is a diet of sorts where you kind of take away a bunch of a bunch of types of like groups of foods, and then after a month you kind of bring them back in and see how they affect your body, kind of narrow in on things that may be unhealthy for your body. I have chronic hives, so I take an antihistamine every stinking day, because if I don't, I itch freaking everywhere. I don't know if there's a doctor out there who knows about this and is probably saying I'm dying. That's fine. Keep it to yourself. I just want to die without knowing that I'm dying. Anyways, so I get that. So I'm going to try to figure that out. And if I can't, I just keep taking my antihistamine and hope for the best. But until then, it's like you take all the fun foods, right? You take all the cheese out. Okay, you take all the bread out. You take any dairy product out. You take any sugar, all like refined sugars. Like I can have like an apple. Like woohoo! That's the exciting food is apples. Woohoo! I can throw dates into things. Yay! But you can stuff all the broccoli and chicken into your body that you can, and then you hope for the best. So I find myself just sitting there like fantasizing about different foods, like oh, remember chips and salsa? I do, because you can't have corn either. Oh, remember remember that greasy Chinese food place down the street? The one in the styrofoam clamshell? That's not Panda Express. No, those guys are amateurs. No, this is the one where it's like that the board in the back has faded and they've changed their prices like 10 times. So it's just masking tape over their old prices. It's that kind of place. And they just pile it in there. And it's like $8 and they just pile it in there. And I'm like, I know this is going to kill me, but it's so good. It's so good. So I long for it. I'm coming back for it, I promise. Oh, goodness. I don't know. Has anybody had any of that? I'm thinking about it and my mouth is watering. Oh, goodness. My wife and I used to do this is a long time ago for a very specific like pregnancy thing. We were both on this like crazy diet, but the doctor was like, you get two cheat days. You get a cheat meal and a cheat day. So like we would treat it as a cheat 24 hours. So like like we would stay up until like midnight, like right at midnight. We would get in the car, we'd drive down to this 24-hour donut place, and we would get donuts. And we would just like, we'd spend the week like lusting after the food that we were going to have during that time. And it was like, it was so good. We wanted, oh goodness. And then when midnight happens, we're like, get in the car. And we'd get in the car, we'd go. It was glorious. But I don't have that. I don't have my cheat 24 hours. I have this. I have broccoli and chicken. Stuff it in. All right, I'm all done talking about that. It's conference season. Oh my goodness, it's always conference season. I always talk about that. This is when my anxiety shows up, friends. So the conference, I get the email from the IOCDF. Hey, y'all can send in a proposal. So I'm going to write a proposal and they'll reject it. Because they get like 8 million of them and they accept like 8, I think. And like 5 of those are from John Hirschfield. Anyways, so I'm going to send that in. But immediately, like the day after I got that email, I already got my conference nightmares. I don't know if I've talked about these before. I get my conference nightmares, which I'm at and I get them like 6 months after the conference, and great, now I get them 6 months before. So they are, I'm at what is a conference and I'm always lost. I always don't know where I'm going. I'm sure I'm trying to find something and then the rooms are changing. It's very weird. I'm sure again some psychodynamic person out there is going like, you have a bad relationship with your mom. I don't know. So anyways, that's what's happening. So I will buckle up and deal with those. All right, how about I stop my yammering, get down to business. Let's get into Dave's question and then I'll get into my answer.
I've been struggling with sensorimotor OCD recently, specifically awareness of other people blinking. I listened to the episode about sensorimotor OCD, hoping it's going to help, but I've now become really aware of my own swallowing, which has been really, really tough. It's beginning to improve, but it's still been very difficult. I felt very trapped. So firstly, sort of wondering any advice that you can give me for this particular thing, but also any thoughts around, should we avoid listening to or hearing people's triggers with other OCD things that we don't have in order to sort of protect ourselves, or should we only sort of look to do that if we're feeling in a kind of good, resilient place, because it's hard enough when you're dealing with one trigger and then suddenly you listen to something and you've gone, oh, I'd never thought of that. And then that becomes a new trigger for you as well.
All right, Dave, thank you so much for that question. This is a really great question. I think it's a really important question. It's a subject, and I hear this a lot about sensory motor, but then about broadly other things. But since I've done a lot of sensory motor episodes, I hear more things about sensory motor, and people send me angry emails about things. So sensory motor, well, so first off, it is common for obsessions to switch over the course of somebody's life. Okay, it is to a certain degree to be expected that the focus of someone's anxiety, I'll say may, but will and may, it'll shift from one thing to another over the course of one's life, depending on what's important, the phase of life that you're in, the stresses that your life at that moment have, or just because anxiety is kind of a what would be a nice way to say it? A bother. I'm going to say that. I'm going to try to, I don't use my pirate language on the show, but if you're in session, I do. So if you ever talk to me in person, I will. All right. But it's a bother. And so what it's going to do is it's going to shift. But again, recognizing that it's not like you've gathered a new obsession or a new subtype, right? You've gathered OCD again. It's just OCD, right? All of the stuff that we're talking about in this episode, it's just OCD stuff, right? So it's like having so if someone has, let's say, sensory motor OCD, and then later on it matures, it graduates, it shifts, whatever you want to call it, into contamination, or it manifests more as a harm type of thing. It's not like you've now accumulated all those subtypes. It is all still OCD. And remember, the nice thing about that is that all the tools that we talk about, all the tools that I talk about and everybody else on everybody else's podcast, it's all OCD stuff. So we need to take a step back and remember this is a pattern of unwanted intrusive thoughts, feelings, images, sensations, or urges that cause anxiety or unwanted feelings or unwanted feeling states that feel like they are resolved by some type of behavior, either physical or mental. And through that action, it gives you a perception that you have eliminated the danger, or have at the very least given yourself this momentary reprieve from anxiety or the unwanted feeling state. But that process unfortunately reinforces the obsession and reinforces the quote importance for your anxiety to be present. And now your brain has created this association. So whenever this experience, this thought, this feeling, this image, this sensation or urge happens, your brain goes, why, I know what to do about that. I do my compulsion, right? So that cycle continues. That's why we are trying to pull out compulsions, do fewer compulsions, do more of living life, right? Cut out the compulsions and go do the things that you find are more important to you. Now, in the process, we have to then stick with and sit with the unwanted thought or the unwanted feeling and the unwanted thought or experience or sensation or whatever it might be. And that's really the case as well when it comes to sensory motor OCD. So just briefly, for those of you who are new to hearing about sensory motor OCD, it is, as you can guess, a subtype of OCD. All it is an obsession about a physical manifestation, a physical feature or function of the body, right? So it can be things like, it can be skin sensations, it can be your heartbeat, it can be blinking, it can be breathing, it can be like your body in space, just various sensations, right? Eye floaters. It can be, what is it? Ear ringing? Why am I blanking on the name? Oh no, that's not good because I has it. It doesn't matter. It's going to come to me in like 20 seconds. So it can be all of that stuff. Now, this is similar but different from hyper awareness, right? Hyper awareness is kind of the kissing cousin, which is a really weird phrase. It's a kissing cousin of sensory motor. Hyper awareness you can think about as like stuff that's kind of like outside of you, stuff that is you can also be inside of you, kind of like hyper aware of your thoughts. You can certainly be hyper aware of your blinking and breathing, but I would say sensory motor kind of fits under the umbrella of that in terms of hierarchies of things. But either way, it's just paying too much attention to stuff. Now, again, this is also going to be different from the awareness, the hyper awareness, and the obsession on these sensations in sensory motor and hyperawareness is going to be different from the excessive attention paid to your groin or paid to your heart in different other types of obsessions, like your groin in sexual obsessions or your heart in health related obsessions. It'd be the difference is like with sensory motor, the fear is like, oh no, I can't stop paying attention to this sensation, the eye floaters, or tinnitus. I told you it was going to come back. That was longer than 20 seconds. Or tinnitus if you're spicy like that. But it's going to be different because the in hyper awareness or sensory motor, the sensation itself is perceived as the problem, whereas the attention to your groin or attention to your heart is kind of it plays second fiddle to the problem, which is the perceived problem, which is maybe my heart is bad and maybe I'm sick and I'm gonna die, or maybe maybe I'm a pedophile and I'm wondering whether or not my groin is being activated in some type of way, right? But it's not, oh no, I'm thinking about my groin, the world is over, right? So that's one of the main differences there. So the focus ultimately should be in treatment on normalization of that sensation, right? Dave, the feelings that you're having, blinking, breathing, eye floaters, tinnitus, or whatever you're feeling, it is a sensation that one can have, and it's a sensation that you are having, and it's a sensation that all of us who are listening and talking today are can experience if we really just put our attention to it, right? There's stuff, and at the end of the day, it's ultimately not a problem. It is just a fun thing our body does. But when OCD jumps onto it, then it creates this whole separate thing. So we want to try to be normalizing these sensations and normalizing these experiences while tolerating that awareness alongside other sensations and alongside other aspects of your life. So it's not an either or, it's an and. Think about that as the focus of the treatment that you're trying to do. So it's not like I can either be paying attention to my swallowing, right? Or I can live my life. The idea is we're going to acknowledge that you have swallowing, you are swallowing, we will swallow. By the way, as I say this, I'm sure all of you are going to be more attentive to your swallowing because I'm talking about it, right? There's this fun game, it's an example from ACT where it talks about, like, think about a lemon, right? Like, just for a moment, like, everybody think about a lemon. Like I want you to, like, imagine taking that lemon and, like, putting it on the table, like, slicing it down the side, opening that up, right? And you see it's kind of glistening and glossy and shiny, right? And when you take that lemon and we put it right up to your nose, you smell it. You can kind of imagine what that smell is, right? And then when you take that lemon, and I want you to imagine holding it in your right hand, and you take it and you stick your tongue out and you just go, ah, and you lick that lemon, right? Oh, and you feel that, and you know what that feels like, right? Feel the tanginess and the sourness and the wetness or the coldness of it. As I'm talking about this, some people out there might notice more salivation. And more of a, or even more of a puckering, or maybe more of that, like, feeling on the side of your jaw. I don't know if y'all get that. Maybe it's just me, but you might start to notice a physical response just because we've imagined something, right? How amazing and terrifying and frustrating that we can just simply imagine something and our body starts to react to it, right? So take that for a lot of different examples, but the fact is that we can, our brain has an incredible power to do those things, but we want to be holding these feelings and these sensations alongside in our experiences, right? So it's not this either or, okay? So we're taking that feeling, I forgot even why I brought up that example. It's still a good example. But we're taking our blinking and our breathing and our swallowing and our eye floaters and our tinnitus and our feelings in our knees and our ankles and our lower back into our life. And it's going to be there while you're in a meeting, while you're in class, while you're with your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, mistress, or mister, I don't know, wherever you go, okay? All right, so I just kind of want to set the table with that as this idea before we jump into things. Now, something to note here. All right, so let's jump into your questions, actually. All right, so your main questions were kind of twofold. So you said, all right, should you avoid listening to others' triggers to kind of protect yourself? Or just do that when you're feeling resilient, like, right? And then you also said, like, that worry, and I'm going to address this later. It says, like, I've never thought that, but now I'm thinking that. So I want to talk about that later. But your first question is, like, should you avoid others or should you avoid others? So flat out, hard answer, no. You shouldn't be spending a life in avoidance of things. If we spend our life avoiding, we will avoid living life. All right? As quippy and as silly as that sounds. The idea is that if we say, I never want to experience X, then when we go out and live life, we're going to find X inevitably. And when we find X, we go, oh no, I was supposed to avoid that. Now my life is less than because I've experienced X. Well, now I can't do whatever that thing was. So now we go to these other places and we find X there. We go, oh, I can't do that. I can't go to those places now. And now our life progressively gets smaller and smaller because we're avoiding X. And fill in the blank with whatever that thing is. And now we become even more sensitive to whatever X is, because now if it comes up on TV or it comes up in a book or a magazine, or if it just simply comes up in your mind, you've experienced X. Now, notice how your life gets smaller and smaller, and yet you are not avoiding X. It is still there, and it will continue to be there in life, because life is like that. Life is a bother, let's say that. It's good. There are good things, I guess, but it's a bother out there, right? We're going to encounter stuff that sucks. I encounter stuff that I don't like every day. And it could be traffic. It could just be the little things that people say just annoy me and frustrate me or hurt my feelings. That's what life is. It's a collection of these things. And what we're doing is, instead of avoiding, we want to be increasing our willingness to experience them or to address them or to deal with them in healthy, reasonable ways. That, at the end of the day, is the goal of acceptance commitment therapies, to develop what it calls psychological flexibility, is to not get broken or beat down because we've experienced something. Instead, to be flexible with it, to be able to ride through it and not destroyed. Okay, so as we continue. So instead, yes, as I said, we're trying to develop resiliency to new and unwanted experiences, right? We're trying to build the ability to have a wider range of experiences and feelings, right? But not to get stuck in them, and instead to freely flow in and out of them while they flow in and out of us, right? And we do that as we are pursuing that life that we want to live. Now, I want to be a therapist and I want to go to work, right? So, in the course of doing that, I have to leave the house. I have to talk to people. I have to engage with the business of therapy. I have to engage with people. I have to engage with, I don't know, the internet, right? Which all of it comes with annoyances and frustrations. But remember, in the course of living our life, we must encounter frustrations and difficulties. That is a requirement. If we say, I want to have my life and not experience difficulties, is impossible. It's simply impossible. So we're trying to build our resiliency, our willingness to experience those things, right? So to your question though about like, should we avoid? I had this when I ran a group many years ago. I had people ask this question about whether or not they should, like, whether or not a group would give them a new obsession, right? So, like, the idea is you're going to go into an OCD group, and this could be a lot of different people, a lot of different types of or subtypes, and a lot of different types of obsessions. And people are like, well, I already have this one. Like, what if I take on this other one? And my answer to that was, you might. You might. But oftentimes, that new obsession kind of falls off after a week because it usually doesn't get at what, like, your core fear is. Like, it doesn't get at, like, what scares you. Your brain recognizes it as something that's scary, and it may learn from somebody else. Like, oh, Jeff over there is afraid of something. My brain might say, maybe I should be afraid of that thing too. And so we become more aware of it. Now, also because Jeff talks about this, I'm now thinking about this. And because I'm now thinking about this, I'm now going to go out into my life and start thinking about this. I can't tell you how many things I am aware of now because I hear my clients talk about them and because I hear people on the podcast talk about them. I'm aware of, how people are dressed or how people or objects that are around. I'm aware of how of what we touch, right? I'm aware of things that are said in church, right? I just got finished reading through the Bible this past year, like read through the Bible in a year sort of thing, and boy, I was aware of like words or passages or stories that may trigger people and may make people anxious, right? So now, just because they don't affect me doesn't mean they're not going to affect somebody else, right? And just because if your brain is already heightened to be aware of and concerned about things, it may grab onto things as a potential worry. So that happens. And furthermore, I've had emails from people, Dave, that have said, "Hey, Kevin, I listened to that podcast where you were talking about breathing, and dude, I'm breathing now, and this sucks, and it's awful." And then they go on to say, "Kevin, you're the worst, and I hate you." But I know. Point is, these things happen, so it's not weird. It's something that can happen. What I want you to consider, Dave. So this is one of those things that you can practice, is this idea of this decision point. All right. So think about this like V, right? So we have these choices. Maybe it's a road that you're thinking of, right? We're at the fork in the road, and we get a choice to go down one or two lanes. All right. So something happens. We encounter something. We think something. We feel something. It can be new. It can be old. It doesn't matter. But every time something happens, we get a choice. Am I going to go down one avenue where it's me being hooked into that thing? Okay. That it's going to grab onto me or I'm going to grab onto it. All right. And then it's now going to be a bother. It's now going to be a problem. I'm now going to personalize it, or I'm now going to make it my problem. Right. And when I do that, I'm often going to find myself engaging in unwanted behaviors, like things I don't really care about, right? It may be avoidance, it may be rumination, it may be checking, it may be alcohol. In this case, for other people, it may be, again, all those things, right? Unwanted compulsive behaviors, avoidance, checking, rumination. In some people's cases, anger at the FearCast. It can be a lot of those things, but it's a lot of those things that, like, if you were to ask yourself, like, do you, Dave, really want to do these things? You'd probably go, no, I don't want to do those things, and yet I do them. Okay. So we acknowledge that those things are there and they suck and we don't like them, but we don't have to engage with those. But we do those things often when we are hooked into it and when we grab onto it. That's option number one. Option number two is then to unhook from it. Now, unhooking doesn't mean don't be affected, don't be hurt by it, don't be anxious by it, don't be angry at it. We still have responses, we still have feelings, and we're allowed to have those. But there's a tremendous difference between having a feeling and the feeling having us, right? Or having an emotional response and having it dictate what we do, right? So the idea is we feel it, but we're not going to grab onto it. And instead of engaging with unwanted behaviors, we're going to choose to engage with behaviors and things that are more preferred, that are more desirable, that are more values based, right? And that may be going for a walk. It may be listening to a podcast. It may be saying, yep, that thing sucks, or I don't like that very much. It may be calling up a friend. It may just be continuing to do the thing that you're doing, right? So the idea is we get a choice in where we're going to go with that. And why that has to do with this is that, Dave, you noticed a new obsession of breathing. You noticed a new awareness. Let's call it just the awareness. Your brain said, hey, think about your breath for a minute. You went, oh, crap, I got to think about my breath. You're right, it is there. And then you got hooked. And you went, oh, no. Am I going to think about this forever? Is this going to be a new obsession? Am I going to be worried about this forever? Is this going to pull me away from all the things that I want to be doing in life? Work, relationships, school, kids, hobbies, all that stuff, right? Faith, all that, right? Is it going to pull me away from all that stuff and it's going to essentially ruin my life? Oh no, how do I now get rid of this? And now you're engaging with unwanted behaviors, right? Because you're trying to get rid of it and it's hooked to you. Instead, we can say, okay, here's this thing. Here's this thing. Now, what do I want to do about this? Well, I can ignore it, right? I can pay as little attention to it as possible. I can acknowledge that it's there. I can actually pay attention to it and be curious about its sensations, not in a critical, judgmental, avoidance sort of way or like destroying sort of way, but I can just kind of notice what that feels like, right? It's like, think about like having a new food you've never had before, right? you wouldn't try to just take it and bite it and like swallow it as fast as you could. You would bite it and chew it and think about it and pay attention to the way it feels, the mouth feel, the taste, the smell of it, right? The whole experience. That is, and you'd be curious about that. And part of that curiosity does help you to decide whether or not that's something that you would eat again or whether or not it's not something for you. But you would experience it in order for you to come to a conclusion. So what I'm asking here is that we could say, all right, that's another thing we can do is just experience that. All right, I'm thinking about my breath. Well, all right, what does my breath feel like? Not in a judgmental way or an attempt to control it or to destroy my attention towards it, but say I'm going to be curious for this moment, and then I'm going to be curious about something else. Now, that's an option. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but notice there's a tremendous difference, right? Now, again, we can take that and go, yep, I'm breathing, and that sucks, but I've got a meeting to go to. And then go to the meeting and sometimes be distracted by it, but then we gently redirect ourselves back to the meeting. And then we're going to get distracted by it again, and then we're going to gently bring ourselves back to the meeting. And it's not the expectation of perfect attention on the meeting or firing on all cylinders as we should. I'm putting that in quotes. On the podcast, people can't hear that, as we should. But instead, we're going to be firing on the cylinders that we have available to us today. And that's kind of the best that we can do. And that's the expectation that we should have. All right. So that's one way that we can consider living alongside this obsession. Now, you also said, I've never thought about that. And now I am. And there's a sense of like, oh no, now I'm thinking about this. Oh, goodness gracious, I have to get rid of this. So as I mentioned, this is we can take that perspective of yes, I am aware of this now, and I have a choice on what I want to do with it. Because it doesn't have to dictate my life. It is something that I'm now aware of. Now, I know this is easier said than done, and this takes practice, but this is the perspective that we can start with as we leap off into the action of making our choices, right? It will feel natural to go towards rumination. It will feel natural to go towards checking and avoidance and destroying, etc. But in the process, we're trying to practice something new, right? Now, one of the other things that we don't want to get caught in, alongside, trying to get rid of it or suppressing it or ruminating, is getting into this wishing compulsion, right? The wishing compulsion is this thing that we engage with to try to make ourselves feel better from the experience. And the wishing sounds, for some people, it can sound like, man, I wish I didn't have this, right? Of course, like a mental compulsion can also be like thinking about a time when you didn't have this and how much better life was because of this. I sometimes talk with folks about like a previous obsession they had that at the time it was the worst, and now it's not their thing and it's now something new. And we reflect on how quaint that old obsession was. Remember how quaint it was? Oh, it was so manageable. It was so fine. It was so wonderful. Like Dave, you were talking about your blinking. And then you said, oh no, I started talking about my breathing. Remember how quaint blinking was? Oh, it was so simple. It was just blinking my eyeballs and I could get on with my life. And now this one's the worst. It's all the same. We need to remember that it's all the same. It's just this is the obsession du jour, and that one is the one of the past. Breathing will become one of the past as well, and it will become quaint, like blinking, right? But the wishing compulsion says, oh, I wish this would go away. And then we get into this imagined life where we don't have this and that we are free and joyful and happy and engaged and not stressed. But that's a fantasy because that's not your life. The more you engage in the wishing compulsion and expect that's what life was supposed to be, the more disappointed we are with the suckiness of this present life. So instead of engaging with the fantasy of the wish in which you don't have this, engage with the life that you do and accept it as part of the thing that's there, right? I accept that my sinuses and my lungs are the way that they are. I have garbage lungs and sinuses, okay? I've had 3 cumulative surgeries on those things. They pulled out part of my lung in it. That's my life. I constantly sound sick and have a crackle, and I will forever until I'm dead, and then maybe a little bit after that, I think. But that's my life. What's the point in imagining a life in which that's not there? To get a moment of reprieve? to imagine what it would be like to be, quote, a normal person with their normal lungs. Oh, it must be so happy and joyful. They can just breathe, and it's so wonderful. But why would I do that? That's not what the life is that I have. Instead, I can take my lungs that I have, I can take care of them. I can do the right things for them, right? I do the sinus irrigation twice a day forever. I've been doing it for 15, 16 years, and I will continue to do it. I can, I can not smoke. I can not avoid, or I can avoid as best I can unhealthy lung or unhealthy contaminants, right? I can wear a mask if I'm doing things that would get fine particulates into my lungs. But this is my life, right? So I'm going to do the best that I can with the lungs that I have, and I've done quite a bit with the lungs that I have, right? In high school, I did swim team with my lungs, and my doctor said this is a bad idea, and yet I did it, and I went to city finals with my stupid lungs, silly lungs, excuse me. I learned a wind instrument and did pretty stinking well. I've gone backpacking and all that stuff and done hard things physically with my lungs, and they continue to be this way. If I said, well, my lungs suck, I'm not going to live my life, then I would not live a life and continue to have bad lungs. Or I could have my bad lungs and go live a life as best I can. Could it be better? I have no idea. Maybe, but maybe not. What if it's exactly the same? I just have a crackle. Well, now I have a feature. Now I have a soundtrack to go along with my activities that I do alongside everybody else. But the reality is, I can't know. It's not that it's hard to know, it's impossible to know. Dave, this is your life. So let's take it alongside. Now you have a soundtrack of your breathing to go along with your life. You have the sound of your blinking. I wonder if I can simulate that. I wonder if that sounds like to you. Blinking. Anyways, that's what we can do. We can accept it, right? But we want to accept it and be curious about that experience and hold it alongside the sensations that we're already having. So an exercise that you can practice, and now that I said that, I'm going to blow my nose. Because I do this a lot. Oh, my first sinus surgery I had, it was to make my nose run more because I needed more of that. Thanks, doc. So it runs more than it should. Thanks. I get the idea. But what was I? I was 7. So the third grade, no one wants their nose running more in third grade. All right. So here's an exercise, Dave, that you can practice, or anybody else out there. So we can step back and observe that we have, or actually, where was my example? Oh yeah, so this is it. So we want to step back and observe the problem, quote, the problem, right? And I know I'm using this language. It shouldn't be a problem. It should be an experience, right? You're probably labeling it as a problem, but it's an experience, right? So sit back and we can recognize the reality that you can recognize the reality that you have this experience, you have these obsessions on various body parts. It's not new, so we're not going to treat it as if it's brand new and weird, right? But you can practice the scientific perspective just for a few minutes, right? I want you to observe the experience. You can close your eyes and just focus on your lungs, focus on your breathing, okay? Not with judgment, not searching for resolution or elimination or understanding, but just noticing what's happening and how, okay? How does it feel in your breath? Is it cold? Is it hot? What does it feel like for your skin to move, or your skin to touch and move against your clothes, assuming you're wearing clothes while you're doing this, while you're breathing? You feel that sensation. I also want you to welcome the alarm bell that's going off. Welcome the urge to action as just passengers to your life, but not dictators, not things that are telling you what you have to do, but notice that they're there, right? Imagine being next to a school. You hear the bell going off. It doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't require any action of you unless you go to that school, but you notice it. Similarly, I want you to notice the alarm bell of the obsession. Take action, do something, fix this, get rid of this. Your life is going to be over if you don't do this. Life is going to suck if you don't get rid of it. Okay. Notice how it's there. Notice how it shows up. Hold it alongside as one of the many things that you're experiencing. When you notice your brain getting distracted by your knees or your scalp or a sound outside or that thought of the task you have to do later today, yeah, We don't say, good, I'm glad that one's there. We say, okay, that one's there too, just like my breathing is. But I'm going to focus on my breathing for right now. And I want you, Dave, to see how long you can observe this and describe the process, right? What do you notice about the feeling and the urgency as you hold on to it? Do you notice that it reduces? Do you notice it gets worse? Do you notice it changes in any sort of meaningful way? Weird, curious, cool, fun. That's our response to it. What did you learn about your ability to sit with and observe that feeling? What did you notice about your ability to sit there and not fight it or get angry at it? Curious, huh? You were able to do it for a certain period of time. If you can do it for just a minute before you get angry at it and have to engage with compulsions, you did it for a minute longer than you did before. Maybe next time you practice this, you can do it for a minute and 10 seconds, maybe for a minute and 20, and so on and so forth, until you can have that feeling and notice that the urgency to actually take action starts to come down. It's there, and we're accepting it's there. This is one of the exercises that you can practice. It doesn't eliminate it, but it lets us get used to it. Now, remember, that's just to accept the feeling that's there without engaging in fighting with it, but we're not trying to eliminate our awareness of or eliminate the sensation itself. We're not talking about scripting, which you can certainly do, or watching videos or listening to songs that have breathing in it that trigger that feeling. What we're talking about here is response prevention and toleration, or tolerating the feeling and tolerating the experience of the urge and the pull and the narratives that are going through your mind. Through this process, Dave, I want you to practice self-compassion, okay? It's being gentle with yourself for if and when new obsessions come, because they may be coming. When they do, you're not going to beat yourself up. We're not going to judge yourself. You're not going to hate on it or hate on yourself or scour your experiences or your behaviors to try to figure out what you did to bring it on. It's there. It is there. We're going to offer kindness and encouragement to yourself to get through it. We're going to offer statements to yourself. All right, this one's here. I got this. It's going to suck, but I got this. Or it's going to be hard, or it's going to be difficult, or it's going to be complicated, or it's going to be annoying, and I'm going to get through this. Whatever verbiage you like. But I got this. I can get through this. You know what? I've gotten through the other ones. Remind yourself that you're capable of handling obsessions, of living your life, and of tolerating difficulty because you've done it before. You've done it with blinking. Remember how quaint it was? You handled it then. Maybe you can handle this one too. So, Dave, that's what I got for you today. I just want to offer that as some things to think about. You're not weird or broken or bad. It's switching. It's normal. But we have to expect it and, again, make choices that are going to be towards your life, not against it, towards things that are meaningful and beneficial, not away from the life that you want into behaviors that are useless and meaningless to you. So, all right, everybody, I hope this was helpful to you. I hope this, to you, Dave, I hope this is helpful to somebody else who's listening to this. Until next time, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the FearCast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at FearCastPodcast on Instagram. If you like the FearCast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the FearCast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.